Hello everybody and welcome to another video, and today it is the 8th of September and I'm going to release it on the 9th of September in the early morning. So just know that if anything happens in between then, it's not because I'm being facetious that I'm omitting that. It's only because it happened after the recording of this video. And then obviously I would mention that in the next video, so don't really crucify me in the comments for that. I don't know, people saying it's outdated. Um, I guess it could be in some instances, but in other instances, it's just me trying to be a bit conservative with the gains because there are a lot of rumors that are thrown out, and those aren't necessarily true. And even if they are, there's really no way to know for sure. So I'm not trying to be facetious when I don't want to update the map immediately when something happens. I was probably just away when it happened. And of course, I'll always get to it and then talk about it. So that's not really a concern. But anyway, let's get into the Kherson region where there wasn't really much to talk about. The Ukrainians released a video from Blahodativka right on this roof of a school, confirming it's under their control. I had already said it was under their control, and this was just pretty much based on the fact that they used this to cross over the Inhulets River and establish connections with the Andrivka force. So, no big surprise here. I don't think their capture occurred today. It was already something that occurred previously. Anyway, there was an attempted assault on Ternovi Padi from Lyubomirivka, and they traversed the open fields and made their way towards the outskirts of the town. And the video just showed fighting over there. It didn't really show them infiltrating into the streets with the houses and everything. So I'm still keeping it under Russian control, but just know that Ukraine has their eyes on taking this town. And in the video, the guy actually operating the vehicle and firing the rounds, um, interestingly, he was speaking English. So I guess that was somebody from the Foreign Legion. So they're, of course, operating in the Kherson region as well. In terms of more news, there was news of some fires that I want to show. So first of all, in the Kriviri area, we have fires at this industrial area, which has been shelled pretty heavily for a while now. Before it was on September 1st, which was a week ago, and you could see how this entire area just keeps on getting shelled. All these factories which are being used to basically improve Ukrainian industry, including the military industry in this area in the southern region. So yeah, they're going to shell it. That's probably a target of theirs. And then the Ukrainian target is on the Darivka bridge over here. You have this bridge which was targeted several times, and there was also a pontoon bridge that was targeted. So you have some fires in this area. Besides that, there was one notable fire, but it's so small that I'm not even going to change the map based off of it. It could just be shelling. It's located right next to this town called um, Kostirka over here. So just to know that there was a fire there. Not really important. And again, in this region, the counteroffensive has really died down, and even the Ukrainians have sort of admitted that it's going to be this more long, drawn out process where they steadily take iotas of land, and really at this trajectory, it's not going to be rapid. And that doesn't necessarily have to be an issue if the entire point of this operation was to then go on and launch the offensive in the Balakliya region. Just the thing is, the Ukrainians suffered a lot of casualties in the process, and it's just you have to look at the risk and reward. That's up to your interpretation. But let's move on to the pesky area where we do actually have some minor news from here. The airport and its surroundings have finally been cleared of Ukrainian presence. So they were fighting in this area for since the beginning of the war, honestly. And they had this thing colloquially called the anthill, and it's located in the like western parts of the airport. and it's just filled with these huge fortifications, filled with trenches, concrete barriers, things like this, and it's straight out of like a World War I movie. So the DPR, they were eventually able to take it over, and now they fully clear this area. The only thing standing in between that DPR and the MO4 ring road over here is just some open fields. So perhaps if the DPR has the resources, because I don't think they'll be getting that much help from Russia now, they could reach this road and then, of course, attack Opitny, which has been reported. Ukraine did report that they attacked Opitny yesterday. Let's moving on now. Avdiivka, nothing from there, although there is some like heightened fighting over there. Nothing really new over there. Of course, nothing new from the Donbass, honestly. I don't expect to see anything major there for a while, given the nature of the war right now and all the events going on elsewhere. So, let's get into the most important front, which is the Balakliya front. So, I'm going to talk about this one for a while. I think the last time that I updated the map, it looked something like this, where Vovichi Vyar, both of them were under Ukrainian control, and then the map sort of looked like this. So that might have just been me being conservative in terms of their gains, and now I'm just acknowledging the fact that they made extra gains. But yeah, they have really just taken over this entire part that I'm going over in red, and I'm gonna get into like each specific town and talk about it and its importance now. So, first of all, in Balakliya itself, you had the Ukrainians coming in from the western parts of the city. They were fighting in the suburbs originally. They took Verbivka 2, 3 days ago, fighting around the armory over here, which had a lot of ammunition. So that's where they were really stopped by the Russian National Guard, Rosgvardia. Because Rosgvardia, they're really the ones that were defending Balakliya for these 3 days. Then you had the Ukrainians that were sort of making their way through the suburbs over here and fighting across this bridge area. But I'm pretty sure this bridge was destroyed. Yeah, Russia blew it up. But nonetheless, they were able to cross the river and push into this area. This is really the city center. All this highlighted area. Here are some geolocations. You have one of the Ukrainians raising the flag over the Balakliya administrative building, and at least according to the I think it was like the Euromaidan news or whatever, they translated it and they said that it was from 4 p.m. September 8th, and if that's in Ukrainian time, that's like 7 hours ahead of where I'm at. So let's say that's like 11 or like 9 a.m., something like that. And you had also footage over here, which I need to add. But here we had the AFU tank column driving through Balakliya. I think this one is just like a video that came from some apartment where they were recording the flag of the Ukrainians being raised on the administrative building. So I do apologize for not linking the video, but there's enough evidence to conclusively say that Ukraine took over the center, and Russia, they still originally had control of the eastern part over here, which I'm highlighting, and also like the northeastern part over here. And they did actually have sort of a chance originally to hold these positions and dig in, but what complicated matters is the fact that the Ukrainians, they were actually able to continue advancing from Verbivka to Yakovenko, and then from there to Borshkivka. And by doing so, they could really just advance on this minor road over here and then reach this road, and that would just cut off all of the Rosgvardia's retreat routes, and for that reason, they made the decision to quickly withdraw all their forces intact before they could suffer any major casualties, and they pulled them back using this corridor over here that I'm highlighting in this area, probably using this road too. And now they're just situated in this other town called Morozivka, but I don't think they're going to hold on to it given the fact that they don't have that many men, and Ukraine, they still have a garrison here, although they've moved some of them forward to other positions around the front. They do have enough manpower to overrun the Russian units in this area. And the thing is, once they do that, they're going to have the road to Savinci open. And Savinci is another key town that has been fought over for the past 3 days. So apparently in Zalaman, this is also according to Rybar, their map, the Russians were always in control of Zalaman, and that probably has to do with the bridgehead around Bayrak, Novohusarivka, Shuchurivka, and they probably just expanded that to Zalaman at some point. So they were in this area, and although this bridgehead was retreated from, you did still have some Russian units in this town, and apparently they're still present over here. So they are putting up some defense, and the line looks something like this at the moment. So the Ukrainians are going to try to expel them from here, and then they could potentially use this bridge over here if it's still intact, or they could just set up some pontoon, just cross over it, not too difficult. They could cross over here in this area, and then obviously enter Savinci in that way. So they have two opportunities to hit this town and force the Russians out. So what would be their options if they had to retreat from here? Well, first of all, they would have to fall back to Vesele, which is another key town. It is really just like this node of supplies where you have some warehouses, but the main reason that it's important is because it's this junction between several key cities. So, of course, it connects to Balakliya. It also connects to Izium and to Barova, and also to Vishneva, which is also a town that's very close to the front lines now. So it is just connected to this entire front in general, and taking it over would disrupt supply lines for Izium. And then perhaps you could see some Ukrainian attacks along this line in tandem with attacks on this line. And that would just be like um, something very difficult for the Russians, given the fact that they don't have many men here in this area. That's just a problem. They just don't have the sufficient amount of men to hold such a broad front line, because they put their soldiers in like these certain points, and they use them as like strongholds. But the thing is, all the open fields, all the other areas that aren't defended, or if they are, they're very lightly defended, Ukraine can just cross over them if they build up a large enough force. And you see the consequences. Now they were able to just overrun plenty of Russian gains in the matter of days, just because there were literally no Russian troops in the area to contest them. So that was a failure on the Russian side. Has more to do with the fact that they're not having enough men fighting on the front line. Maybe now they're going to send the third corps to this area, but that's after losing Balakliya and a bunch of other towns. So I would say they're probably going to be sent to Kupiansk. Anyway, in these two towns, they're very important to hold on to, but again, I'm really skeptical of Russia's chances of holding on to these two towns. They're probably going to fall back, I would say. If the worst case scenario would be to fall back to Kupiansk, but they might be able to fall back to some other towns around here. But these are some pretty small towns, although they do connect to some other larger towns. It would give Ukraine a better amount of control of the highways around here and some of the supply routes. So by taking Kryuchki, it would help just better connect Nerov and some of the other towns around here. They would be able to advance south, further south, towards Vesele, and then that would put the garrison in Morozivka, Zalaman, and these other towns in a bit of a predicament, and they would just have to withdraw. And then maybe you could see a line built around here, which could be defended by the Russians, but a more realistic line would be perhaps around here, and then, of course, if all else fails, it would be around the Oskil River. But the thing is, Russia would have to make sure that the bridges over here, specifically this one, and there are a few others that I have to talk about. This one over here, which is crossing from Sankov to Kryhulakivka, and then the one in Kupiansk. These are the three main bridges crossing over the Oskil River, and Ukraine has a good chance of reaching all three of them if they continue to advance at this rate. So, if Russia sees the writing on the wall, they would have to quickly destroy all of these bridges and just abandon the entire west bank of the Oskil River in general. And just based on the fact that you had, like yesterday, that if you reach the crossroad with the MO3 road, and now they've just like quickly passed through this entire area, that is a big danger. And I'm not actually implying that Ukraine is in every single part of the shaded blue area, because they're not. This is just a rough sketch of their land, and it's very fluid at the moment. You have like many Ukrainian columns just staying on the road and just continuing to advance without much resistance. And that's understandable because even Russia, they didn't have like a full control of this area. It was not very consolidated. They were just like in some key cities, and that's it. So most of this is actually just a gray zone, most of these open areas, but it doesn't really matter. What does matter is when you talk about the gray zones in Shevchenkov, because there is a lot of ambiguity as to what's going on in this city. Some Ukrainian sources saying that it fell, some Russian sources, I know Rybar, they still have it under the control of Russia. I'm saying that it's just contested because, one, you do have the Ukrainians filmed at the entrance to the city. So here's the photo of that. And you still have Russians in Rozova and some of these other suburbs around Shevchenkov. And there's no actual footage from the town itself. So I'm just going to say that it's contested for now. But the situation could change here as time goes on. The Ukrainians, they did make their presence known in Bohodarivka and also Brihadirivka. It's just some towns along the road, and there are numerous towns around here that are very small that just passed through, and they weren't of any importance, but this part is important. This is a more minor road, but this is really sort of a dividing line that I'm using at the moment, because you don't see at least any confirmed Ukrainian gains to the east of this, although if they capture it, then this road area, then there would be some issues for Russia. You do see that in this area, Ukraine is actually pushing towards Hrushivka, which is another one of these towns on the road to Kupiansk. And honestly, from Kupiansk to Hrushivka, that's only like 7 miles. And right now, Hrushivka to the front line is only about 4 miles. So if Russia doesn't have enough manpower, which they don't, and this town will be overrun, and then there's one final town before reaching the Oskil River, which is just the suburbs of Kupiansk. And this is where the Russians actually do have an agglomeration of troops. I don't know the real number, but it has been reported by numerous sources on the ground in Kupiansk that there is a buildup. I'm not sure if it's on the western or eastern side, but within Kupiansk, a lot of reserves were transferred, and they are at least preparing for the defense of this city. And the reason why is because Kupiansk is really just the most important city in this entire area. In all this polygon, this is the most important city by far. It's not only supplying the Izium front, it's supplying parts of the Kharkiv front over here. It's supplying the Donbass front, Liman area, all this area, all the supplies they have to go through Kupiansk before they diverge to their other points along the front line. And taking it over would be a major disruption to the system. So within Kupiansk, you have a rail station, numerous warehouses on the eastern side. So again, it is a very important city, and it has been shelled now. It's been reported by the locals, and there was a Russian journalist on the ground who was showing the damage from the shelling. So it has started to be shelled. Usually it's shelled at like a distance of like 15 to 20 kilometers. So once Ukraine consolidates their gains in this area, and they actually set up their artillery, because I'm sure that the infantry, like riding on BMPs, they're going at a faster pace right now than the infantry which is being towed. But once the infantry gets set up, the artillery gets set up, they can very heavily shell Kupiansk, and of course they can use the HIMARS and the other MLRS systems which were actually spotted in Balakliya. And on a side note, most of the equipment being used in this operation is just NATO weaponry. I haven't really seen much Ukrainian weaponry. It's mainly just like Polish T-72s, and you have the Turkish BMCs, which are like supposed to be resistant to mines that are placed on the ground. Um, of course, you also have the MLRS systems from the West. So these are mainly the types of equipment used by NATO, and they've been transferred to Ukraine, and they're using it in this area extensively. Might have to do with some of their success also. The last part of the front line in this area that I want to talk about is the Rakov area. Originally, this entire area was actually under Russian control even yesterday. And I was saying that it wouldn't last that long because the thing is, they were attacking in the direction of this town over here called Chekhovsky. And once that town were to fall, then whatever vestiges of Russian forces are still left in this area just south of it would just be easily encircled, because you have the Ukrainian grouping in Velochiv Yar. You can easily encircle that. So the Russian units in this area, they saw the writing on the wall. They advanced from their very like extensive, not extensive, but like very far western positions in Kharkov, and they retreated just back, consolidated with the other retreating forces in the direction of Shevchenkov, Prushivka, probably going to consolidate around Kupiansk. So now there's a more clear view of at least this area, and one thing that Russia could potentially use is their air superiority in this area, and they have been doing that. Specifically, they targeted Chuhuiv, but the thing is, Ukraine actually has some pretty extensive air defense systems installed in the Kharkiv area after like the months of war. They have it around the Kharkiv city, but also in the other minor towns like Chuhuiv and these other towns around here. So they're gonna have to like install that and ingrain that within their newly taken territories, like in Balakliya, to prevent any sort of Russian strikes in these areas, because they will attempt to strike it very heavily, especially at night. That's something that can be anticipated. And also, they still do have a lot of shells and artillery that can be used. So, I'm sure we're going to see some heavy artillery duels in the days to come as the fighting nears Kupiansk. So, that's it for today. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later.